Have you ever sat in a quiet room with someone you love and felt like the silence was louder than words? Maybe it was with your grown child sitting across the kitchen table. You're drinking coffee, they're checking their phone, and the words just aren't there anymore. Not because you don't care, but because somewhere along the way, you stopped knowing how to speak to each other without things spiraling. So you stay quiet, and they do too. And that silence becomes a wall neither of you meant to build. If any part of that sounds familiar, I want you to know. You're not alone. In fact, a lot of folks over 60 feel this way. Maybe you're tired of fighting. Maybe you're walking on eggshells around your children. Maybe after years of doing your best, all you want now is peace and quiet. I get it. Silence can feel like safety. But here's the hard truth. That silence, if left unchecked, can slowly cause more harm than all the angry words you've ever said. You see, when you're raising kids, you're always in go mode. You're solving problems, correcting mistakes, making sure they stay on the right path. But when those kids become adults, the rules change. And if we're not careful, silence becomes the easy way out. We stop talking about what hurt us. We stop explaining what we feel. And most dangerously, we stop showing them who we really are. That kind of silence doesn't protect the relationship. It erodes it. And unlike anger, which explodes and burns out fast, silence lingers. It settles in the spaces between you and your children like dust. And before you know it, you're both living in separate emotional worlds, connected by blood, but not by trust. And trust, especially later in life, is worth its weight in gold. Now, I'm not saying anger is the answer. In fact, anger often causes its own kind of damage. Words said in frustration can leave deep scars, but silence leaves confusion. It leaves your kids wondering where they stand with you. It makes them guess whether you're disappointed, upset, or simply indifferent. And the worst part is, they might take your silence as rejection. Not because you meant it that way, but because they don't know what else to believe. Here's something that surprises a lot of older parents. Your kids, no matter how old they get, still look to you for emotional cues. Even when they act like they don't care, they do. They're watching how you respond, how you react, how you engage, or don't. When you choose silence, especially after a disagreement or a rough conversation, your child doesn't always think, Mom or Dad just needs space. Sometimes they think, I've lost them, I've disappointed them, maybe they've given up on me. It becomes personal, it becomes heavy, and over time, it becomes permanent. It starts with a skipped phone call, then birthdays get quieter, holidays feel strained, and then you blink and it's been months since you've had a real conversation. And here's where it gets even harder. Sometimes we stay silent because we think it's kinder than saying something that might hurt. You don't want to bring up that thing they said years ago that cut you to your core. You don't want to ask why they stopped visiting as much. You tell yourself, if I bring it up, I'll just make things worse. But by not bringing it up, you leave a door closed. You lock them out of your emotional world. And whether you mean to or not, you teach them it's safer to avoid feelings than face them. Now I know, conversations about hurt, disappointment, even regret, they're not easy. They take courage. And when you're in your 60s, 70s, or beyond, it can feel like those conversations just aren't worth the energy anymore. But here's what is worth it: the chance to reconnect, to repair what can be repaired, to pass on not just memories and traditions, but emotional wisdom, the kind your kids need more than they realize. Because if there's one thing time teaches us, it's that relationships don't get better by accident. They get better with intention. And that intention doesn't require yelling. It doesn't require drama. Sometimes it just means picking up the phone and saying, "Hey, I've been thinking about you," or "There's something on my heart I'd like to talk about." Not to argue, just to share. That kind of vulnerability is powerful. And your kids, no matter how grown, will feel that. They may not respond perfectly, but your willingness to break the silence gives them permission to do the same. You see, anger may break things, but silence prevents healing. And healing. That's what this season of life is for. It's for repairing what matters most. I want you to think about something for a moment. If something were to happen tomorrow, and you never got the chance to say, what's been on your heart? What would you regret not saying? Would it be, I forgive you? Would it be, I'm sorry? Would it be, I miss you? Whatever it is, don't let silence steal that moment. Because one day, silence becomes permanent, and we don't want to live with words unspoken when we had the chance to say them. Now I know some of you might be thinking, but my kids don't want to hear from me. Or, they're the ones who stopped reaching out. That may be true, and their actions may hurt. But the question is, do you want to live stuck in that hurt, or do you want peace? Sometimes peace doesn't come from winning. It comes from surrendering the need to be right and choosing to love anyway. Not blindly, not without boundaries, but with grace, with maturity, with the kind of strength only someone who's lived through 6 or 7 decades can carry. Because strength at this stage of life doesn't come from raising your voice. It comes from raising your understanding, from rising above the need to always be understood, and instead choosing to understand. You have so much life experience, so much quiet wisdom. Your presence, your voice, your insight, it still matters. But your silence, that can unintentionally send the wrong message. You are not powerless in this. In fact, you might be the only one who can break the cycle, who can open the door again, and you can do it without yelling, without fighting, just by showing up, just by being willing to speak the truth, gently and clearly, instead of hiding behind silence. Because when you speak, they'll listen more than you think. When you reach out, they might surprise you. And when you choose connection over quiet distance, you may just get back something you thought you'd lost. Now let's talk more about how to actually do that, how to replace silence with healing words, and how to speak in a way that brings your children closer instead of pushing them away. Now let's talk about something many parents, especially older ones, often struggle with: how to speak without making things worse. You've lived long enough to know that words can either build a bridge or burn one, and that's where a lot of the fear comes in. You don't want to say the wrong thing. You don't want to reopen old wounds. So you think maybe it's better to say nothing at all, but silence isn't neutral. It's not the absence of conflict. It's the absence of clarity. And when there's no clarity, people fill in the blanks with fear, doubt, and insecurity. Your adult child may not say it out loud, but silence from a parent often feels like judgment, or abandonment, or even punishment. They wonder, are they disappointed in me? Do they still care? Have they given up on me? That's the weight silence can carry, especially when it's coming from someone who once held their hand when they were scared. So how do you speak in a way that heals, not hurts? Start small. You don't have to dive into the past all at once. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is, I've been thinking about you. That opens the door. It says, I'm here. I still care. And if you're ready to go a little deeper, try something like, there's something I've held on to for a long time. I don't want it to weigh on us anymore. That kind of sentence doesn't blame. It doesn't accuse. It simply invites honesty. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be real. Now I know that sounds easier said than done, especially if you've been carrying pain for years. Maybe your child made decisions you didn't agree with. Maybe they said things that hurt. Maybe you feel like you already tried, and they didn't meet you halfway. But healing isn't about fairness, it's about freedom. And sometimes the only way to get free from the pain is to stop waiting for them to make the first move. And if you're wondering what to say, here's a simple truth that goes a long way. Speak to the relationship, not the behavior. Instead of saying, you never call me anymore, try, I miss hearing your voice. See the difference? One sounds like a complaint. The other sounds like a connection. Instead of saying, "You're always too busy for family," try, "I treasure our time together, even if it's short." Those kinds of statements don't put people on the defensive. They invite them in. They let your child know you're still open, even after everything. Now let's talk about something even deeper, the emotional inheritance you leave behind. At your age, you've probably thought a lot about your legacy. You might have written a will, set up insurance, or passed on family keepsakes. But have you passed on emotional wisdom? Have you shown your children how to face hard things with courage and grace? That kind of legacy outlasts money, outlasts possessions. It shapes the emotional DNA of your family for generations. If your children never saw you own your feelings, never heard you say, "I'm sorry," or "that hurt," or even just, "let's talk about it," then they may not know how to do those things themselves. And they'll carry that silence into their own relationships, with their partners, with their children, maybe even with you. But when you choose to break the pattern, even if it's hard, you give your family something priceless: emotional clarity, emotional safety, the kind of honesty that doesn't wound, it heals. And you don't need long speeches to do it, you just need sincerity. It could be as simple as, "I know I've been quiet lately, and I want to change that." Or, "I realized I never told you how proud I am of the person you've become." Those moments, those sentences, can change everything. Because no matter how old your children are, your words still matter. They carry weight, and your silence does too. But one harms while the other heals. And let's not forget this: your silence can also hurt you. It can keep you stuck in resentment, in confusion, in unspoken grief. It can steal your joy in the very years that are supposed to be your most peaceful. And it can rob you of the deep, honest relationships you deserve to have with the people you love most. You've spent your life taking care of others. Don't let unspoken pain follow you into these later chapters. You deserve more than that. You deserve connection. You deserve truth. And yes, you deserve peace. But not the kind that comes from avoiding conflict. The kind that comes from resolving it. Maybe you're thinking, "What if I try and they shut me out?" That might happen, but you won't regret trying. You'll regret staying silent and never knowing what might have changed if you'd spoken from the heart. This is the part that takes courage, to risk being misunderstood, to risk being vulnerable, to risk being real. But you've made it this far in life. You've been through storms. You've survived heartbreak, loss, change, and challenge. This is just another moment to show your strength, and it might be the most important one yet. Because when you find the words to say what matters, without anger, without shame, you create room for healing. You show your children that no matter how old they are, they're still worth the effort, still worth the love. And maybe, just maybe, they'll follow your lead. They'll open up, they'll soften, they'll feel seen and safe again. And instead of silence sitting between you, there will be trust. Not because everything is perfect, but because you chose connection over comfort. Because you chose courage over quiet. And here's the truth. At this stage in life, the people who matter most aren't looking for your perfection. They're looking for your presence. They don't need you to have all the answers. They just need to know you're still there, still listening, still willing to walk through the hard stuff with them. So speak, reach out, say what needs to be said before time takes that chance away. Because your silence, no matter how well-intentioned, will never say what your heart wants to be heard. It's strange, isn't it? How much we carry inside that never gets said. Thoughts we replay over and over, regrets that sit quietly in the corners of our memory. Maybe something you wish you could tell your child, but the moment never felt right. Or the relationship didn't feel safe anymore. or you convinced yourself that they wouldn't care anyway. But I want to tell you something now, and I hope you really let it sink in. They do care. They may not show it the way you hope. They may not say the words you want to hear. They may be tangled up in their own lives, their own wounds, their own silence. But deep down, they care. And more often than not, they're waiting for a sign that it's still safe to come close. You can be that sign. You don't have to fix everything. You don't have to explain your entire life or rehash the past. All you have to do is open the door just a little. Be the one who blinks first, who softens first, who reaches out. Not because you're weak, but because you're strong enough to go first. You may never know the full impact of your words, but you will absolutely feel the difference they make in your own heart. The peace of no longer carrying the weight of what was left unsaid. The comfort of knowing you gave your love room to breathe, not just through gestures, but through your voice, because silence can be heavy. And when it settles over a relationship long enough, it starts to feel like absence. But the good news is, it's never too late to break that silence. Not if there's still breath in your body and truth in your heart. You might be surprised how quickly things can shift with just a few honest words. I miss you. I think about you more than you know. I want us to feel close again. Those sentences are short, but they carry the power to melt walls that years of silence helped build. And once they're spoken, you don't need to do anything else, but let them land. Give your child space to take them in. Let the conversation unfold naturally. And be patient. Some wounds need time to breathe before they begin to heal. But here's something else to keep in mind. Even if your child doesn't respond the way you hope, your words will stay with them. Your honesty, your effort, your courage, it won't go unnoticed. It might take weeks, it might take years. But what you plant today can still grow into something beautiful tomorrow. And remember, you're not doing this for control. You're not doing it to get a certain reaction. You're doing it to free yourself from the prison of silence and to remind your child that love never truly disappears. Even when it goes quiet for a while, there's a kind of strength in saying, I don't want to leave this world with things left unsaid. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. That's legacy. And your legacy? It isn't just in the things you've done. It's in the way you made people feel. It's in the stories they'll tell about you. Not just dad worked hard or mom was tough, but they showed up when it mattered. They never gave up on me. They knew how to speak love, even when it wasn't easy. That's what lasts. That's what echoes beyond our time here. And maybe, just maybe, your willingness to break the silence will teach your children how to do the same. Maybe they'll find the courage to speak up in their own lives, to repair, to forgive, to soften with the people they love. Maybe your actions today will ripple forward in ways you'll never fully see. But know this, it matters. You matter. And your voice, even if it's been quiet for a long time, still holds power. Power to bring healing. Power to invite closeness. Power to remind your family that real love isn't always loud, but it always shows up. So if you've been holding back, if you've been hiding behind silence because it felt safer or simpler or less messy, I want to invite you, gently and sincerely, to consider what's still possible. One conversation can change the air between you. One brave sentence can reopen the door. Don't wait for a perfect moment. There may never be one, but there is this moment. And it's enough. It's enough to call, it's enough to write, it's enough to simply say, I've been quiet, but I don't want to be anymore. Because your silence, though it may have protected you, also might have left your child wondering if they mattered. And they do, and so do you. So let's replace the silence with truth. Let's replace distance with courage. Let's stop waiting for the perfect words and just speak the real ones. They're the ones that change everything. Before we go, I want to remind you of something important. You are not too old to grow. You are not too late to love. And you are not too far gone to change a relationship that matters to you. Start small. Stay kind. Be honest. And know that the quiet strength in your voice, when you choose to use it, can do more healing than anger ever could. If this message meant something to you today, I'd love for you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Maybe there's something you've been wanting to say to your own child. Maybe you've already broken the silence and want to encourage someone else. And if you'd like more conversations like this about life, growth, love, and strength at every age, go ahead and like this video and subscribe to Strong Elderly Life. Because we believe your best years aren't behind you. They're still unfolding, one honest step at a time. Here's to peace, to healing, and to using your voice, not to break people, but to bring them home. You've got this, and we're with you every step of the way.